What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you a game preview / game prediction heading into this weekend's matchup between the Navy Midshipmen and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for week number 0 of the 2023 college football season. College football is finally returning this weekend. It's college football week, and obviously we got our first games coming up this weekend. It's week number 0. Of course, the real college football season doesn't start until like next week, but it's week number 0. Of course, we count it as a college football game this weekend. We don't have a lot of big-time matchups this weekend except for this one between Navy and Notre Dame. Again, this is a rivalry that dates back all the way into the 1910s, I believe, and this is a matchup I think that's going to be – I think these are two teams that are now meeting for the 96th or 95th time this year. You look at last year's matchup, Navy lost to Notre Dame at home 35-32. So both of these teams heading into this weekend, big-time showdown here. Of course, this game is going to be in Dublin, Ireland. I will pretty much talk about the game summary here in just a little bit, but how this video is going to work, we're going to give you pretty much the game preview. We're going to give you the stats here for both of these teams from last year, and then we'll obviously give you the game summary, and then we'll give you keys to the game for both of these teams heading into this weekend to win this one. And then, of course, we'll give you a prediction at the end of this video as well, and also give you my final score prediction as well. We'll do this for other games coming up in week number 1 starting tomorrow, so we have a lot of game previews and predictions that we're going to do here on this channel. So let's get right into it here with the Navy versus Notre Dame game happening this weekend. And we'll start with the stats here comparison. You look at Navy's stats from last year, we'll start with them. Navy is coming off a disappointing season at 4-8 last year, so they're coming off a very disappointing season. Hopefully they're a little bit better by that time. Of course, the American Athletic made a lot of changes. They brought in some new teams and everything. Of course, Cincinnati has gone to the Big 12. UCF's gone to the Big 12. Houston's gone to the Big 12. And, of course, BYU, they weren't in there in the, they were an independent school, so it's not really like they were in the American Athletic. But Navy coming off a disappointing season at 4-8. They averaged 21.8 points per game last year. Total yards per game, 331.2 yards per game. Passing yards, 85.8 yards per game last year in the passing. And you can see why this Navy team does not pass the football that much. And you can see why the points per game numbers are a little bit low for Navy as well, because they don't really pass the football that much. This is a team that just likes to run the football, run out the clock as well. Speaking of rushing, you look at the rushing yards from last year, 245.3 yards per game last year for this Navy team. And I think they were top 5 in the country last year at running the football and, per game. Look at this number, 245.3 yards. I mean, like I said, they like to run that triple option. They just like to run the football. Are kind of like similar to Army's offenses. I mean, both of those offenses are pretty even. I mean, obviously, they just love to run the football and run out the clock every time. So that's going to be the strength, I think, of Navy this year is definitely that running game. Offensively, they were 109th in the country last year, and defensively, they were a pretty solid defense at 32nd in the country. They weren't, the most talented defensive team, but I think that defensive line was really good enough for Navy, to be a top 35 defense. And I think that number could change this year. I don't think Navy is going to be a bad defense this year. I think they're pretty solid every single year. So I think that defense, like I said, will be really, good this year. They'll kind of hold teams to like low-scoring type games. But again, they're going up against a really good offense in Notre Dame this weekend, so maybe that defense doesn't make the stops that they did from last year. So those are the stats from Navy, again, coming off a 4-8 season in 2022. Looking at the numbers for Notre Dame, they're coming off a 9-4 season for Marcus Freeman's first year. Maybe they got off to that 0-2 start in the early part of the season. They lost to Marshall and Ohio State. They kind of turned things around there, and they kind of got a lot better as the season progressed, and they ended up, winning their bowl game and ending out 2022 pretty strong. You look at the points per game, 31.8 points per game last year for this Notre Dame team. I think that number is going to go up this year a lot due to the offense bringing in some guys from the transfer portal. Total yards per game, 396.2 yards per game last year on the total yards per game. Passing yards, 207.2 yards of passing. I think that number is going to be quite high this year. I think this number will probably be in the 300-yard mark. Obviously, Sam Hartman coming over from Wake Forest. I mean, he can pretty much, he put up some big numbers at Wake Forest, and I'm kind of expecting the same thing here for Notre Dame this, year and everything. But we're going to find that out if Sam Hartman is really the real deal for Notre Dame. Pretty much throughout the first 4 weeks. I mean, they do play in week number 0 and week number 1. I mean, they got a lot of games coming up here in the month of September. But again, we'll have to see Notre Dame, kind of play a tough team in order to figure out this Notre Dame, what they're going to look like on the offensive side of the football. Rushing yards, they were an okay team at rushing the football last year at 189 yards per game. I don't think Notre Dame's going to pretty much focus on the running game that much. I think they're going to kind of want to focus on the passing game and give Sam Hartman plenty of time to throw the football. And then you look at the offensive ranking, 60th on offense last year, then 21st on defense. So they were also pretty solid on defense. I mean, both of these teams pretty solid. You look at the comparison between these two teams. They were both, pretty solid on defense, like I just mentioned. And I think this is going to be a defensive battle this weekend. But, I mean, this is last year's stats. I mean, it's not really about last year. It's kind of, now about this year. But, we're just giving the stats comparisons before we head into this game this weekend because we don't have the stats for this year. Of course, it's the first game of the season. So those are the stats comparison between these two teams, Navy and Notre Dame. Let's now get to the game summary. This game is going to be this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. on August 26th. This will be on NBC on the TV channel NBC. Of course, it's Notre Dame that runs the NBC channel mostly, and they mostly have their games on the NBC channel as well. Notre Dame comes in here at as the number 13 team in the country in the AP poll. I also have them at number 13 in my top 25 poll that I did a couple weeks ago. Notre Dame, as of right now, is favored in this game by 20.5 points. That's a pretty high number there, but the over and under is at 50.5. So they're calling this one as a low-scoring game. I kind of do agree with the over and under here because I think this is going to be a really low-scoring type game, perhaps. I mean, if you look at both of these teams, both defenses look pretty solid. I think, offensively, Notre Dame's going to have to score points in this game, but you look at this game, it's on a neutral site field. It's in Dublin, Ireland, so it's not like at a home field advantage type game or anything like that for both of these teams. I think Notre Dame probably will have the crowd advantage in this one, even though it's in Dublin, Ireland. I think there's going to be more Notre Dame fans there than there are Navy fans. But like I said, Notre Dame is 20.5 points favorite. I mean, Navy is a big-time underdog in this game, but the over and under is at 50.5. So they're calling this one as a low-scoring type game. And like I said, I do agree with the over and under being a low-scoring type game. So again, this game is this Saturday, the first weekend of college football, and obviously the first big-time game in week number 0. Of course, we have week number 1 coming up next week and everything. Got a lot of big-time games in week number 1, but it's all about this weekend. So that's the game summary. Notre Dame and Navy, again, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on August 26th in Dublin, Ireland on NBC. Again, Notre Dame 20.5 point favorite. And, of course, over and under is at 50.5. Let's now go to the keys to the game here. Keys to win game for both of these teams. Starting with Navy, and that number 1 key is to obviously run the clock. I mean, I think Navy is going to do that this weekend. I think they're going to probably want to try to keep that Notre Dame offense off the field for the most part. I think that's what they're going to kind of do here in this game. And then run the football. I think Navy is going to run the football a lot in this game. We won't really see the passing game be a big factor here for the Midshipmen. I think running the football is their big key. I think they can run it on that defensive line. It really just comes down to the secondary for Notre Dame to make stops, to get Navy's offense off the field. But they're going to run the clock and run the football in this game. Run that triple option as well and everything. And then the number 3 key is to make stops on defense. I think that defensive line can stop the run pretty well against this Notre Dame running team, but passing game is kind of what I'm concerned about for Navy's secondary. If Navy's secondary can make some stops on the defense, I think this Navy team could probably win the game, but I don't really see that happening, to be honest. But I think, against that passing attack of Notre Dame, it's going to be very tough for the secondary to stop. But I think their defensive line, they can hold up on the run game of Notre Dame. And like I said, the keys to win game here for Navy are definitely to run the clock here. That's the number 1 key. I think they're going to have to run the clock out and obviously run the football is another big thing. But make stops on defense is another big thing. Those are the keys to win game here for Navy this weekend. And then for Notre Dame, their number one key is obviously score points in this game, because Notre Dame fans are kind of expecting, a high-scoring, affair for Notre Dame this weekend. I really don't see that being the case. I think Navy's defense is good enough to hold Notre Dame to just a little bit of 20-something points or something like that, but you never know. It can happen. I mean, it's week number 0. Again, we don't really know what the teams are going to look like just yet, and obviously we have to know about these teams until we get into week number 4 or week number 5. Number 2 key is obviously the passing game. Sam Hartman, if he gets time to throw the football in the pocket, he's going to make some big-time plays and some big-time throws. This might not be the same passing, game that we saw at Wake Forest for Sam Hartman, but it's going to really be about this weekend. We'll find out if Sam Hartman is really good enough for this Notre Dame team. But like I said, it's week number 0. He'll get better down the stretch, and we'll see what he looks like in this first game against Navy and everything. And obviously the number 3 reason is to stop the run. Notre Dame's got a, really good defensive line, but they got to make stops on the triple option. They got to defend the triple option pretty well, and obviously they have to, watch the run game of Navy a lot in this one. They're just going to run out that clock as well. They got to make some stops on defense as well in order to get their offense out on the field and make sure their defense gets off the field as well. So these are the keys to win the game for both of these teams this weekend, for Navy and Notre Dame. Let's now get to the prediction now for both of these teams. So we got Navy versus Notre Dame. Again, this is the first big-time game here in week number 0 and the first big-time game of the college football season. Again, a rivalry that dates back all the way a long time ago. Notre Dame's won the last 5 meetings. Last year's matchup was pretty close. It was 35-32. I think the game is going to, here's how I think the game is going to play out. I think in the first half, the game is going to be low scoring. I think Navy's defensive line will make some big-time stops on the offense. I think Notre Dame gets off to a pretty slow start. I think Notre Dame goes up at the half, but I think, Notre Dame in the second half will start to kind of get that offense going. But really, I still think this is going to be a short-scoring game. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. I mean, it's week number 0. The offenses probably won't be explosive enough to really do some damage, but I'm going to pick Notre Dame here to win this one. I think Notre Dame doesn't win it pretty easily, but my final score prediction is going to be 27-7. So again, Notre Dame, I think, is just a better overall team and also the better overall roster, but Navy is an underdog in this game. They're not going to, you don't really want to count out this Navy team. I mean, they are really good almost every year. Their defense, like I said, is going to be really the big key in this game. I think defense can make some stops, and obviously they're going to run out the clock, and I think that's the reason why Notre Dame won't score 30 or 40 points in this game. I think Notre Dame's going to take some time here to, maybe figure out that offense, but maybe in the second game they'll score, at least 40 points, because this is a Navy team, like I said, that just likes to run out the clock offensively, and obviously they like to run the football and keep that defense on the field for as long as possible. So Notre Dame, pretty much, I think they'll win this one to open up week number 0 of the college football season, and my final score prediction is 27-7 to Notre Dame. So give me your thoughts on this game down in the comments below. What do you expect to happen this weekend between these two teams? Again, this is the first game of the season in week number 0 for 2023. And again, we'll have more game preview and game predictions coming up throughout this week. We'll have some week 1 games starting tomorrow. We might do Florida versus Utah starting tomorrow. I mean, that's another game that's going to be pretty big. So we'll see what happens there. But stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.